Nature Trust of BC is a not-for-profit organization whose goal is to maintain biodiversity by securing, managing, and protecting significant land resources. For over 40 years, they've worked with farmers, conservationists, naturalists, and the Ministry of the Environment to protect the province's natural heritage for future generations. Without question, British Columbia is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. Our abundance of natural beauty and untouched wilderness is a true national treasure. Now, it makes sense that the province as a whole has been a leader in the so-called green movement. The last decade has seen an explosion in eco-friendly initiatives emerging from both the office towers of Vancouver and the halls of government in Victoria. But on today's West Coast Escapes, we found a developer who's been going green for decades. His name is Andy Pearson, and he's chairman of Avia West Resorts. They're a family-run business that started with a single resort in Parksville. Now, over the past 20 years, the company has expanded and now has resorts across British Columbia. The Parksville Resort, Pacific Shores, is located on 15 acres of prime land adjacent to Craig Creek, a tributary of the much larger Englishman River. On the other side of the creek is 10 acres of property owned by the Nature Trust of British Columbia. And this isn't a coincidence, because Andy has worked closely with the Nature Trust to protect the creek and the estuary it forms when flowing into Craig Bay. We're going to look at how Andy and the Nature Trust are working together a little bit later. But first, I had a chance to walk the property with Andy and learn all about his operation. So how many people do you have in your club?
In the club, we have a total of about 8,000 families, but that's not all at this one resort, of course. But somebody who purchases here, they can then use it personally, or they can exchange it through the RCI system, or they can rent it, and we act as rental managers and try and optimize their returns.
While this is a timeshare operation, you don't have to buy into the resort to stay here. Rentals are available anywhere from a couple of nights to a couple of weeks. There's a spa and a restaurant on site, and the rooms are luxurious. But with the resort's luxury and meticulously maintained gardens, you won't want to stay in your room long. This close integration with the environment is all part of the resort's commitment to the environment.
Well, I guess we tried to be green before it was a popular thing to do. Such things as recycling. We started recycling before the regional district required businesses to recycle. And we have grown these beautiful gardens without any herbicides or fungicides or pesticides of any kind. And as you can see, we've tried to bring the nature into the project, and I think we've been fairly successful doing that.
So Andy, tell me about the Neighbour on the other side of the estuary.
You mean the Nature Trust?
Yeah,
Well, they're very good neighbors. We share a common walkway system with them around the estuary, and then there's a little bridge that takes our guests over to their land, and it's a wonderful way to preserve forest and open space.
We took a stroll across the bridge and headed down to the creek to take a look. You've been here since the 60s, and it's all involving with what you do in the development business. It's sort of like, in the old days, you just go in there with a bulldozer and do business, but it's different.
I tried to be a little more discreet than slash and burn, and I've always had a love for nature, and I think we're trying to reflect that in our resort development. One of our prime mission statements includes being kind to the environment and trying to do things in a more sustainable way.
I don't know, are you doing that from a business sense, or is it from something out of your spirit?
Well, I think when you see Pacific Shores, you'll see the garden, and they're organically grown. We've never used herbicides or pesticides, and that doesn't make us any money, but I think there's a combination. People are now going green, and some people won't stay at a resort unless it's got green keys or a green globe or something green about it.
But you were going green back in the 70s, weren't you?
Yeah, it's nice now that they have some way of measuring how green you are.
Because you were involved with the Nature Trust, or the precursor of the Nature Trust, back in the 70s.
I don't take a lot of credit way back then, except for opening up the dike on the Englishman River floodplain. We opened the dike, and of course it flooded all the estuary again. The Nature Trust now owns that land, and I'm proud that we opened it.
Since that time, preservation of the Englishman River estuary has become a landmark project for the Nature Trust on Vancouver Island. The man responsible for overseeing this project is Tom Reed, and Tom is the conservation land manager for the Nature Trust on the island. When we come back, we're going to meet Tom. We're going to talk to him about the work he's doing with the Nature Trust of British Columbia. Before the break, we met Andy Pearson, a developer who has been working with the Nature Trust of British Columbia on Vancouver Island. Together, the groups have been working to preserve and to protect a portion of the Craig Creek, a tributary of the Englishman River. I spoke to Tom Reed of the Nature Trust on their side of the creek. Now, this property is indicative of some of the properties that you get in that you didn't buy it.
Right. Yeah, this was, historically it was donated by the Alice Wall, and that's what we call this property, the Alice Wall Conservation Area. And she donated the property to Parksville Fish and Game Association in memory of her late husband. Donated to the Nature Trust in the mid to early 1980s, and since then we've managed it as a fish and wildlife conservation area, and we've maintained the trails so people of Parksville and neighboring communities have a place that they can come and walk, and there's connected to other trails to neighboring properties.
You know what I find interesting about this is that it's right across the estuary. You have some private development going on over there that Andy Pearson is running quite well, and all this here. So how do you get along with your neighbor?
Well, we get along with we call him Andy very well. He's a very conscientious developer. He has a business that he needs, he's in the business of real estate development, and early on we approached Andy, and he's very aware of there's a conservation area here, and so we've worked cooperatively with him for numerous years in maintaining the habitat value as well, providing his guests with the opportunity to actually come and enjoy the property and to learn about fish and wildlife that are here that they may not know about. And Andy's been a great supporter of the Nature Trust for several years. So that's what I find a lot of people would find strange is that you have a conservation group that really sort of gets along well with private development. And it's something that as the Nature Trust we actually do pride ourselves on, that we do realize that people want to live in these places. They're beautiful to live in, and so it's really to our benefit to work closely with them as they develop their properties to highlight the natural ecological significance of the area that they can use for their guests or and they can promote. And so it's been a very good relationship, and we've got similar relationships throughout Vancouver Island. The real benefit of the work being done here will be measured by time. 100 years from now, future generations will be able to walk through the park just as we are today. The mandate of the Nature Trust guarantees that this land will be protected in perpetuity. However, in order to accomplish this work, the Nature Trust relies on individuals and corporate donations, as well as partnerships with corporations such as Abia West and Andy Pearson. Together, we can all ensure that British Columbia remains the best place on earth.